Hello everyone, welcome to my channel and welcome to another video. So today we're going to be talking about my super fine hair and how I like to look after it, because I know a lot of viewers who watch my channel, they have either very thin hair or they've suffered a bit of hair loss like I did after I went off the birth control pill, and are looking for sort of tips and tricks of how to manage that and hopefully get it back to condition that it was before. I know there's quite a lot of YouTube videos out there already about styling your hair for fine hair, but like some of them I'm like, God, that is not fine hair. Like, you have no idea. So just to describe my hair specifically, I have very fine straight hair. It does grow quite long. It is low porosity, which means that it doesn't lose moisture necessarily that easily, but it also doesn't take it in that easily either. So once it's dry and once it's damaged, it's very hard to get the condition back again. So I do just have to look after the hair that I have really, really well so it doesn't break, and so I can grow it as long and thick as I can. So if you are new to my channel, then welcome. And before we start the video, I would really appreciate it if you hit that like button. And if you want to subscribe and see more videos like this, then that'd be great. I'm so close to 1,000 subscribers. So really appreciate it if you help me get to that 1,000. So my first tip for managing your fine or thin hair is wash it gently. So fine hair is very fragile, and it actually likes to be left alone as much as possible. So I'd recommend using shampoos that are very gentle and very mild, ideally for hairs that is dry, because if you use ones that are for oily hair, what they tend to do is tend to be very stripping, and that gets rid of all the oils and all the sort of natural sebum in your hair that is actually very good for your hair, and because of that it will tend to make your hair overcompensate. Also, it's just not very good for the actual hair cuticle to use shampoos that are very stripping. Ideally, don't wash your hair too often if you can avoid it. I know that's sometimes a bit difficult because thin hair, when it gets greasy, it does look greasy quite quickly as well, but I would recommend sort of trying to leave it sort of 3 times a week if you can. So I'm currently actually not using any conventional shampoos. I'm just washing my hair with powders and sort of natural shampoos because I'm just doing a bit of experimentation. For me, that has actually made my hair feel a lot thicker. If that's something that you're interested in, I have a video on that as well. But be gentle when you wash your hair, try not to wash it too often, and do look into using some sulfate-free shampoos. So my second tip is do not use heavy products in your hair. The more products you use in your thin hair, the more it's going to weigh it down. It'll feel greasier and dirtier quicker. You'll need to wash it more often. And there are certain things that are genuinely quite damaging to your hair, I have found. For example, hairspray. I used to use a lot of hairspray, especially when I was trying to get volume into it. I would hairspray it, back comb it, and it just made it really tangly, and when I was trying to brush it out, it just meant that the hair strands would break off really easily. I also find a little bit the same with styling mousses and things like that. Yes, they do kind of make my hair a little bit bigger, but they do also tend to make the roots a bit tacky, and again, it just makes the hair feel a bit brittle. So ideally, I would just use minimal products if you can. There are certain things that I think are quite good, so things like heat protection sprays and texturizing sprays and things like that, things that are very mild, but just really try to avoid the things that are heavy, such as hairspray and styling mousses. So my third tip is use soft hair ties. I personally like to use scrunchies the most. I actually like to make these out of old clothes and things like that. They're super easy. Let me know in the comment section down below if you want me to do a video on how to make your own scrunchies, because it is super fun. The second type of hair tie I like to use is the thin, soft fabric hair ties. Those are very nice and gentle on your hair, and they are also thin enough to hold up fine hair. But the 2 types of hair ties I really like to avoid using. The first one is the hard, thick, elastic hair ties. I find that those are quite damaging. And the second one is the hard coil hair ties. They're actually marketed as they're supposedly better for your hair, but I have found that for my thin hair, I have to loop them around so many times that they often just get tangled up in the hair, and then when I take them out, they pull out my own hair. So I actually don't recommend using those for you if you have very thin hair. I think they are probably better for people who have thick hair. So my fourth tip is use gentle hairstyles. I pretty much have 3 hairstyles that I rotate between. The first one is a loose plait or a braid. The second one is a loose low bun. And then the third one is a messy bun on top, which is pretty much how I have my hair 90% of the time. I find that the messy bun looks particularly good with your scrunchies as well, and it does actually help to make your hair look a little bit thicker without damaging or putting any strain on any of the strands. My fifth tip is to use dry shampoo. If I want to get a little bit of extra volume, if I'm going out or something like that, then what I like to do is get a little bit of dry shampoo underneath, back comb it, just the underneath layers, but very gently, not so hard so that you don't damage any of the hairs. And then just layer your top layer of your hair over that so that you get a nice bit of oomph in your hair. Using dry shampoo is a much more gentle way of getting extra volume in your hair without damaging it like hairspray does. My tip number 6 is use minimal heat products, and I'm sure lots of you already heard this before. So what I like to do is I like to air dry my hair after I washed it as much as possible. Sometimes I do like to use a hairdryer, and then I use the very, very lower setting or the cold air setting. It does take a little bit longer to dry your hair with cold air, but it is definitely worth it, and it has exactly the same effect if you can just have a little bit of patience. In terms of hairstyling, I find that my hair really doesn't take to hairstyle, so like curling tongs or anything like that, very easily at all. So I don't really bother. So I was actually once in a fashion show. Oh my God, I said that so casually. How douchey. Once in a fashion show. The hairstylist actually had a tantrum about my hair because he couldn't do anything with it, which looking back on it is actually quite funny, but yeah, just had to put it up basically. If you do want to get a little bit of curl into it, I do find that if you, when it's damp, just curl it into a bun like this. I can usually just like leave it like that. Leave it like that for as long as you can. And then I do find that it is quite nice to get a few waves, but if your hair's like mine, then the waves will go after half an hour anyway. So tip number 7 is avoid dyeing or highlighting your hair. So I actually do highlight my hair a little bit. I used to get like a full head of highlights every single time, and I found that that was incredibly damaging for my hair. But having said that, I do like to have a little bit of blonde highlight here and there. But if you can avoid using dyes or highlights, anything like that, that is obviously ideal. If you do want to keep dyeing your hair and getting a few highlights in like I do, then I go for a crown balayage. So that basically means that they take just the top part of my head, the crown of my head, and they do very, very few strands, and they leave a lot of the natural hair. All of this underneath is my natural hair color. It's just a little bit lighter here and there, maybe at the front and maybe a few at the top. So the reason I like to do this technique is because firstly, it means I can leave as much as my natural hair as possible, but still getting that slightly lighter, blonder effect. And secondly, balayage means that you don't need to get your roots done so often, because every single time that they go back to do the roots, they will always go over a little bit, even if they try not to. It will always tend to go over a little bit of the hair that's already bleached, and that means you're just damaging it every time that you go. So if you can avoid going as much as possible, then that is ideal. So my next tip is to get regular trims, and I mean sort of once every 2 months, I think is what I do, maybe 2-3 months every now and again. And I actually went for quite a drastic chop to begin with when I really decided that I needed to sort out my hair, and it's just to get rid of all the sort of damaged split ends underneath. I like to go for a blunt chop, so it's just one level. It makes your hair look a little bit thicker, and I really do try and go regularly because I really think that that helps to keep your hair healthy at the ends as well as at the top. Getting regular trims will also help you if you are trying to grow your hair a bit longer. I know that seems a little bit counterintuitive, but it really does, as long as you keep the health of your hair all the way to the ends. My next tip is to use gentle hairbrushes. I have 2 hairbrushes that I like to use. The first one is a Tangle Teaser, which I think is so great if you haven't already got one of these. You can use it when it's wet and it's dry. It is that soft, and it just gets rid of all the tangles really quickly, really easily without any breakage, and I highly recommend this if you have fine hair like I do. The second one I use is a boar bristle brush. It's actually boar bristle plus a little bit of plastic. It's from a British hair company called Mason Pearson, which is very fancy, expensive brushes. This is also very good if you are feeling like you have sort of slightly oily or greasy hair. It brushes it through all the way to the ends and means that you can kind of keep going a little bit longer. So these are the 2 I like to use. I definitely don't use hard plastic brushes or plastic combs or anything like that. I find that those are very damaging for your hair. And now my final tip, which is the pièce de résistance, is if you're gonna get hair extensions, get one of these. And this is a halo hair extension. So it's a 1-piece. I used to use the sort of individual clip-ins, but I found that those are super damaging and they just pulled at my roots all the time, and after a while just made my hair even thinner. So now I bought this. These just sit in your hair without pulling any of the roots. It has this wire, which is how it just manages to sit in. Let me know in your comments if you want me to show you a video of how to put this in for thin hair. I think that that would make this video too long if I did that here. So yeah, let me know in the comments if you want to see that, and I will do that for you because this is a game changer, I'll tell you that. Oh, look at that. Beautiful. So those are my 10 tips of how to look after your fine or thin hair. And let me tell you guys, I used to get really annoyed that I had really thin hair. I'd be like, why do I have to have thin hair? I want to have thick hair. But now I actually don't think it's so bad. And especially since I've come back from having some hair loss, I definitely do not take the hair that I have on my head for granted, because let me tell you, there's also lots of benefits of having thin hair as well. It dries quickly, it's very low maintenance, and yeah, it's kind of fluffy and cute. I quite like it. So yeah, I hope you like this video. Do give it a thumbs up, like I said before, and I'll see you again very soon for another video. Bye!